Hi, I'm Dave Murphy. Welcome to Sage on Facebook Live. This is Eamonn O'Brien.
Hello.
If you'd like to
How are you
yourself.
both? Yeah, I'm Eamonn O'Brien. I'm the founder of the Reluctance Speakers Club, and I help people to speak memorably.
Very good point. The Reluctance Speakers Club. Can you tell us why you founded it and what is it, Eamonn?
Yeah, the idea is to help people who have a serious fear of speaking in public. And this might surprise you, but even in Ireland, where we're supposed to have the gift of the gab,
We talk a lot, yeah.
yeah, 8 out of 10 people in Ireland have such a fear of speaking in public,
Yeah.
in business, even in senior positions, that they actually never do.
I think that goes across other countries as well. It must
Well,
be the same
it does,
in
and
the
actually the UK
Germany,
is
France,
even
you know.
slightly higher. Even in North America, where kids actually get a bit of a grounding on speaking more commonly in public, 3 out of 4 folks, that's all, that have any capacity to actually get up on a regular basis and speak. And even amongst those who then do speak,
Yeah.
the number of folks who are genuinely interesting, where people think, oh man, I'm so glad I saw Dave, I saw whoever,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really small.
Why is that? What's that come down to?
Largely because 2 things are true. The single biggest reason is because the speaker's trying to do too much. They try to take, let's say I have a half an hour or I've got a quarter of an hour, and they think, how much do I know in this time? And they think, if I share it all with you, you'll be much better off.
So that's like verbal diarrhea. It's just throw it out there. Everything you have.
Well, there's an element of that, but here's the thing, as my wife commonly reminds me, men can't multitask and neither can women.
Yeah.
If you give people too many things to remember, they can't do it. And the thing is that if you're giving a talk, you're giving a presentation, people don't actually have the capacity to listen at the level that you might imagine.
Yes.
There's a fascinating study that was done in America by UCLA, and what they found was, in terms of just how little we remember, that if you think about yesterday, so just yesterday,
Yeah.
thinking about yesterday, a gorgeous Sunday, and if you remembered more than 1% of what you did yesterday, that would actually be remarkable. Most people will struggle to remember, just from a previous day, just one day, more than 8 to 10 minutes of what they did in any shape or fashion. In fact, if you realized how little you remember, it's a wonder you get out of bed at all. But so to answer your question about what happens is that we try to cram too much in, and really, if you want to get people more excited, it's much easier if you simplify things, where you don't ask them to do too much, but you get them focused on something that is really interesting. And the second thing is, it mustn't be a presentation which is a one-way traffic.
Yes.
It's got to be a conversation. So, and that's what should happen incidentally even on this video today.
And is there any other elements that you include in that to get the conversation going? Is there any kind of tools or tricks that you can
Oh,
employ?
loads and loads and loads.
Yes.
The most important thing is, and we're going to talk also about video today, and where this is even more important, is you need to provoke your audience into thinking this is going to be interesting just as quickly as you can.
Yes.
Literally within a matter of seconds. So, if you turn up at a meeting, you turn up at an event, the one thing you don't want me to do is to stand up there and say, now, and another thing I did, and I did, and I did. So it's got to be something where you think, this is really interesting, put down that phone, let me sit up, and because I might just come away with something that's genuinely valuable. And if that's true, then how cool is that? It's been a good day.
Yeah, that really touches on something as well. We live in this modern world where we're now on Facebook Live, for example, and people are on their
Hello,
phones.
folks.
Facebook Live. If you have any questions, we'll answer the questions as they come in.
Any questions, literally.
At all. And then after, if there's any questions at all, we'll pass them on to Eamonn and he'll get back to you as well. But that state of flow that people talk about, where your brain is in flow, it's interrupted by that mobile device, that notification ping. So how do you grab people's attention at the start to make them do what you just said there? Turn off their phone, turn on the do not disrupt on their phone, and put it down and actually be engaged for that 30 minutes where you're going to have a conversation with them.
The single most important thing you have to do at the start of every presentation, and including in video, is you need people to care. So the one thing you don't want to do is to start with a plethora of facts and details. because if there is a snooze button, that's it.
Well, that's what politicians do, don't they, when they don't want to answer a question? They throw out facts
our
and
worst
figures.
still is to start off with something. So I am so pleased that Dave invited me here today, and I'm delighted to see Joe and Mary and la 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 la. And today I'm going. Oh, here's a really bad way. Here's something you categorically do. If you see somebody doing this, actually try to stop them doing this. You know this notion of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them afterwards what you told them. What a load of pants. Don't do it, because if you tell me what you're going to tell me, I know what you're going to say. I don't have to listen to a blind word that you say afterwards. So don't do that. That's a tragic mistake.
Yes.
So start with something that is much more emotional, and if you want something that's emotional, start with something your audience cares about, and make it clear that the most important thing within the first 30 seconds is your audience should think, what's going to happen next?
Yes, like a good drama or
like
TV,
a good drama, which is why
yes.
I'll often start a talk with a story.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing more engaging. In fact, almost everything that you learn in life comes from story.
Yes.
Put stories in.
Yeah. Well, that comes back to the Greeks and the Romans. It was verbal stories, even Irish folklore and folklore around the world. It's stories that
Shin Scalella.
Yeah, exactly.
That means here's another story.
Yeah, it gives it folklore connection, and it makes people drop what they're doing, and it gives them life lessons as well. Yeah. So you touched on something very good there. Do you research your audience in advance so that you have a story?
100%. And not only do I research my audience, here is a tip from professional speaking, and this will pay mad dividends every time you speak. Don't just find out what the topic is about on the day. Don't just research your audience and things they might have heard in the past. Pick up the phone. Call people who will likely be in the audience, maybe 4 or 5 people, and ask a few really important questions like, so what's on your plate right now? What's really bugging you? What do you need to know? And if you could do that, why might that matter? Because 3 things will be true when you turn up. Firstly, that you know the audience will care about that subject. Secondly, it gives you an opportunity to say, I was speaking with Dave last week. Yes. And Dave was saying, every time we do this, we have an awful problem with that.
Yes.
Now, not only is Dave feeling,
but his friends are feeling connected.
And everybody else is now feeling connected too, because what the audience now knows is that you are starting from their point of view. You are not there to preach.
Yes, exactly.
So, no preaching, conversation.
That's why there's such a low number in church turnout around the world, probably. Because the priests and the religious guys don't go out and talk to their audience anymore.
No. So there's nothing more important than talking with your audience. Yeah. And also, here's the other thing that happens that's really important. Most people, if they're going to speak, particularly if it's a really important meeting or event, they're going to be feeling nervous. If you've talked with people before, you already know what they care about, and if you're like one leg up.
Yeah, exactly. But what about, say, the CEO of a company or the CMO or even a director or a manager who has to speak in front of 20 or 25 people, and just the nerves are just too much? How do they deal with that kind of fear, that kind of nerves when they go out and they have to make a presentation? They've just been newly promoted into a level of the business that's beyond it. They've always found public speaking a little bit difficult.
It is, and actually a lot of that, here's the thing, I've done a lot of research on why people have fear in the first place.
Yes.
And in Ireland and elsewhere. And when you ask people, well, why were you getting those butterflies in your stomach before? The typical thing you'll get is, I'm afraid I won't remember what I want to say. I'm afraid I won't say it the right way. Yeah. I'm afraid that it won't sound very good. But at a more senior level, we get really worried when you're with people who really you want to influence.
Yeah.
Do these people already know what I'm going to talk about? In fact, do they know more about this? Does this actually sound remotely interesting? Because if I'm up here and they don't like it, I'm going to look like a numpty. And no one wants to look like a numpty because it ruins your street cred.
Yeah.
But I go back to what I said about just how little we remember, and actually this is very important, because if 2 things are true, if firstly you have asked your audience before, listen, what do you all need to know? What do you care about? And you figured out, how can I share something that is genuinely valuable to you, that is genuinely helpful to your audience?
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about whether they remember your words. They won't. They will remember things that matter to them if you've solved a problem. And if you can tie it into a story, if you can tie it into imagery,
Yes.
then that's really the wherewithal that allows your audience to feel more relaxed and you to feel more relaxed. It is much easier to tell stories than to recite facts.
Yes, yeah. So if you're telling a story, putting video or a presentation in, does that break the flow of the story?
No, in fact, it helps it. So one of the things that you can do with video, and in fact, I'll deal with this in other veins over the next while. I'm starting to roll out a whole pile of series on better video.
This is on the Reluctant Speakers Club, isn't it?
On the Reluctant Speakers Club, is that story actually helps you to figure out, as you would with any story, how quickly can you hook the audience into thinking, oh, there's something that's interesting here with the characters are in a situation.
Yes.
And
yes,
so
yeah.
you think about anybody in a business situation.
Yeah.
What is the problem these folks have? How quickly can I kind of hook people into the actual, what are the issues at stake here? And translate that not from your perspective, but in a way that matters to them.
Yes. Yeah.
And then everything from that point on, from a video perspective, whether it's a kind of an informational type of thing, whether you're trying to persuade people of anything, is really about letting something unfold and actually learning from people who produce movies. Years ago, I used to make commercials in America. I made about 300 of them, over 100 TV commercials. And one of the first things I learned is that if you've only got 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and a video, incidentally, if it's longer than a minute on Instagram or on Facebook, you're not going to get an awful lot of attention unless you've got people booked in beforehand to watch something for a period of time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you've got to basically give people a reason to think about what happens next and next and next within the story. So you almost want to think like a movie producer, where you say, okay, so that's what I want to share. How can I create a storyboard that actually shows how you do that? You do have to treat it like a bit of a production.
So would you suggest storyboarding even your presentations and your public speaking?
100% do it, because if you can see it visually, then you can share it. And here's a really interesting thing about what people remember, including you when you're talking to an audience. Your audience can only remember what they see. Here's an extraordinary thing. So
that's a great quote.
Yeah. Well,
where's
it's the Twitter. It's the quotable quote.
where's the basis?
No,
in this
it's
thing?
a serious quote, actually, because
here's
here's what the research shows, and this is myriad research. This is not a small amount of research. In your long-term memory, do you know that you have no words? None. Zero. Zip. And words actually have no meaning until you give them meaning. Mm-hmm. You have to see something. In fact, if I asked you, what did you do yesterday? What did you learn when you were at a meeting, when you were at an event? What you do, and if I watch your eyes, they go up like this, look.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're replaying like little movies, and you connect all the little movies together. It's like ping, 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 ping. It's incredible what's going on in your brain. Absolutely incredible. But it is about connecting one image with another, and if you can do that, then your audience will remember more.
So images are really important.
And you know when people say, I think he or she is a visual learner. Yeah. Everyone is a visual learner.
It's funny because when you think about memories as a child, the memories that come back are usually visual memories with no sound.
Yes.
They're like silent movies nearly in some ways, which is kind of really, really fascinating. So obviously the foundations of our brain, or mechanisms of our brain of how we remember, is a visual thing, without a doubt.
It is, and it's interesting. My daughter was off in a thing we do to our children here in Ireland at an Irish camp. We call them Gaeltacht. And I picked her up yesterday, and I said, so how was it? And because this is the second time she had been, and she said, oh, it wasn't as good this year as last. And I said, why was that? And so she started to kind of recreate, if you like, the memories. And I said, well, was the house you stayed in better or worse? And she said, it was better. And I said, well, okay, so what about the food? Oh, the food was much better.
Yeah.
I said, and what about the people? Oh, they were much nicer. And I said, what am I missing here?
Why was last year so much better than?
And it's because sometimes when we think about things that happened in the past, we colour in things and we forget about all the rubbish stuff that happened.
Yes.
And you know when people say the good old days were much better?
Yes.
Honest to God, they probably weren't.
No, it's putting a gloss on it in a machine in a post-production. It's putting it through Photoshop in your brain, really, in some ways.
It is.
So is that what happens in some situations when you go and you in a public speaking as someone who's receiving the information? Sometimes you can Photoshop it in your brain as being really productive and useful.
You can, because people will they're very selective. It's kind of interesting, again, going back to the research, and I won't go into stats and figures because people don't remember those. But here's the one stat I do want you to remember. Your short-term memory, nothing gets into your long-term memory unless it goes into your short-term memory. Short-term memory, we used to 30 years ago be able to remember maybe 7 to 11 things at a time. Now we're lucky if it's 4 to 6, and it's obvious why, because we got this thing going on. We've got Facebook, we got social media, and we're working actually as hard when we're reviewing social media as we are in real work. We never switch off.
Wow.
Which is really shocking, and the upshot is we're all like, ah!
So the brain is overloaded.
The brain is overloaded. So the problem is the number of things that can actually get into your short-term memory is really, really small, and you have to bump something to let it in.
Yes, yeah.
But if what you do is instantly visual, you bypass all the stuff.
Yes,
get straight into the long-term memory. So when we're looking at something, you're looking at your Facebook stream today, more than likely the thing that you will be attracted to is first of all the visual.
Yes.
Before you see the words, and then you see the words and you look at a headline, you got less than a second now for you to say, oh, that looks like it might be interesting. So that's how quick you have to work. But visual.
On the visual side, have you any tips for visual presentations? Should you wear some striking clothes? Should your presentation be minimal and have very little words on it? Is there any particular things
so
that you push?
there's two things. The first visual thing, and it's funny you asked me that question. I did a major league conference yesterday with one of Europe's leading experts on body language. This guy is amazing. His name is Stefan Vera.
Yeah, as soon as you say body language, people are consciously moving me around.
But there's a lot of my eye talked about body language. Like that means I'm not interested. Oh, really?
Yeah. It's quite strange, isn't it? But some people are just comfortable in that certain positions, obviously. But body language does tell you so much.
The body language does. But one of the most important things we talked about yesterday. This was for a bunch of professional speakers. So this is a really critical audience, and they're going, "What are you doing on the stage? I should be there." Yeah. But one of the most important things to do, and it's seriously important, is just to smile.
Yes.
Because it looks like I'm happy to be here. So the first thing the audience wants to know is, do you actually give a hoot about me?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It opens you up, I think, as well.
So if you turn up and you're like this, and people are thinking that fella doesn't look like he wants to be here. I'm thinking about the same.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
It's funny.
Yeah, it is definitely. I was thinking as well, or talked to my daughter recently. She's 6 years of age, and I said, "Do you like going up?" Like, this is in advance of this. I've asked her a few questions and stuff about public speaking, because I was at the Next Web Summit recently in Amsterdam. And Chase Jarvis, the photographer who does Creative Daily on YouTube, is brilliant public speaker, absolutely brilliant, and he had this fable about creativity in kids. When you draw a picture and the teacher in the class goes, "Anybody want to show?" In junior infants or first grade, every hand goes up. By the time they're 5 or 6 years into school, 2 or 3 hands go up. The confidence is there, or there's social fear and anxiety there as well. So I asked my daughter, I said, would you be interested in, do you mind getting up and doing your Gaeilge to talk your Irish in front of the class, or maths or anything like that? She said, no, just go up. Have you anything you're afraid of doing or anything like that? No, but this is like a girl who does like dance and stuff like that. And I said, does everybody in the class feel like that? And she said, no, some people just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And what does that, is that an innate thing in human beings, that sometimes we're just shy and we don't want to
a lot of
speak?
You know, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
In short, and a lot of that fear comes from the fear of the unknown.
Yes.
So a kid who's standing up, and you know, an 8-year-old, I have a chance to stand up and kind of be in front of others because it's an opportunity to engage. So they're not really thinking about the impact of what they say. And as you start to think about that, then the price of admission goes up. I'm going to make an admission now. I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So as a kid, I just once, at the age of 15, made a really stupid mistake. I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I've never done public speaking before. I'm going to do school debates. And I remember it's like it's a big rod I hit myself with on the back. So I turned up on the day, and I still remember to this day exactly what the topic was. So I'll say it in the English version, which was, this house, I was for the argument, this house believes that the Prime Minister, we call him Taoiseach, is a ringmaster, and the Parliament is little more than a circus. And I was for the argument, and I learned this thing off. I had about 3 or 4 minutes worth of stuff, got about 30 seconds in, and I had a complete and utter blank. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I look at the audience, they're no help, they don't know either. And then I did, and I wouldn't have known about this because I'm of that generation, I did a Forrest Gump, where I just looked at the audience and said, and that's all I know about that. And I sat down to stunned silence. I was mortified.
And what? Do you know what happened?
Oh, I did. I could not remember what happened. And actually, oftentimes what happens with the fear is that when you are fearful, it's a bit like a kid who's asked to speak up and do poetry reading in class, to recite poetry. Yeah. And what do you do if you're a bit nervous? You go as fast as you can go. And you're doing that because
you just belt it out.
Because
get it over with.
If I stop here, I'm going to forget what comes next.
Yeah.
And I'm toast.
I'm fried.
But the problem is that while you do maybe get it out or not, is that you now, your mind is working too hard.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to engage with an audience, you're now multitasking. And all it takes is for one little distraction, and the next thing is, I have no idea what happens next.
But is there any techniques to stop that happening, like mindfulness or?
Well, so there's 3 things that you can do. The most important, and folks, I'm going to let you into a secret. There is nothing more important than this, is to put time and effort and energy into practicing before you speak. You know when somebody says, "Isn't he great?" or "Is she great?" because she can speak off the cuff. Folks, if you're speaking off the cuff, look, I'm speaking off the cuff. You know, people have an awful lot of my eye about, you know, am I supposed to be able to speak without notes and the likes?
You've notes, I've notes.
Yeah. Have I looked at them yet? No. But if I needed them, there's nothing wrong with using notes. If you think about best speakers ever in the last 100 years, so we're looking at Martin Luther King, JFK, Churchill, Gandhi, and on it goes. Do you know that if you took the top 10 there isn't not one, who did not speak, including Ronald Reagan, without notes?
Yeah.
None. So why do we get this notion that somehow when you're on stage that you're supposed to do it? Because 2 things are true. Firstly, if you're reading something, you're going to bore the bajinkers out of your audience. That's a racing certainty. Look, watch what happens. Look, I'm reading this. I can't see you, and now you can't see me. You can go to sleep. Put the snooze button on. Do not disturb. And maybe at some juncture, politicians in particular, terrible for doing this.
Yes.
Because it's safe for you, because you didn't say anything wrong, but nobody gets anything out of it.
Exactly.
But the flip of it is that, so the first thing is you have to practice, but you need to get past memory so that you have a conversation. So here's the single most important thing you want to get to. It is more important to be approximately right than precisely wrong. That's so important, I'm going to say it again.
Yes.
It is more important to be approximately right than precisely wrong.
Example being?
So if, for example, I'm talking about storytelling and how to do storytelling so that it is more interesting to your audience, I know in advance that the most important thing I'm going to ask you to do for a story is to find places and ways in which you can invite your audience in. So whatever else I might share with you, that is the bit where I'm going to say, I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to talk about, say, things like, don't try to do too much even with your stories where you fill in a lot of detail. Have you ever read a book where, you're 10 or 20 or 30 pages in and you're wondering when, in fact, ever is this book going to break into a story?
Yes, yeah.
And it's, oh, come here. I have no patience for that. I have no patience for that at all. So a lot of it is also about finding ways to just subtly introduce things so that you let your audience do a lot of the work.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is about learning to do that. And the third thing is about not trying to squeeze too much into a short amount of time. If there was one thing I would say more than anything else for a talk is try to, if you've got 20 minutes worth of material, here's a great tip. Now, you can write this as a banker for the rest of your naturals. It's a really good one, right? Use the 25% rule. The 25% rule is, if you've got 20 minutes worth of speaking, don't have 20 minutes worth of material. Have 16, better still 15, because now you're not rushing to finish that.
Yeah.
You can spend the time to be present with your audience, and they won't be thinking, oh, good God, poor David. David is working so hard.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's just a thunderbolt of stuff, a big wave, like a tsunami of information. When you do 20 minutes, though, you can just push it onto people.
Yeah, so if you can find ways, so firstly, if you know in advance what your audience cares about, that's going to make you feel much better. Secondly, if you relax knowing that your audience won't remember an awful lot of what you said, but they will remember something where it's genuinely helpful. If they get one nugget that they say, that's really good, if I leave this room and I do that, that's a great idea, or maybe that's going to help somebody that I work with. This is particularly important for senior execs, that there is a tendency to kind of do the, I did this, I did that, I did the other. But if you get into that I speak, honestly, you've lost the audience.
But that's like a conversation in social media, or even in a face-to-face conversation at a party. Someone starts talking about themselves, your brain just switches off, and you go, I'm going to get another drink, and you disappear and never talk to that person again.
For those of you who are familiar with a famous episode out of Father Ted, which was it was a wonderful thing where this fellow was talking about boilers. And another thing about boilers. So I don't care how much you know about something. The audience only cares about what they're going to get out of whatever you share.
I think that's a fascinating point that you brought up there just a minute ago. The second point was that when you think like a good story, a book story, or even like a movie or something, where you give the audience a room to think, it also gives them ownership.
It is
of what's happening in the story.
Yeah.
So they feel like they can remember this. So does that help in their memory of the situation, of the talk?
And also, when you can see that the audience is more interested and more engaged, you also relax, because honestly, if you're doing something out of memory where you're going, you are going to be working really hard, and you can't spend the time that you need having a conversation. And in fact, I'm sure you've seen this. It's kind of the Overactors Guild when they're doing a performance where, like, this is the bit where I do that, this is the bit where I do this, and I'm watching somebody paying more attention to how they're doing something rather than what they're saying that actually matters to me. Nothing matters. Here's a rule. Here's an interesting thing. No communication ever comes from a leader. None. It only comes from the people who get what you share. Because if I'm a leader who wants to influence or encourage you to do something, you're not going to do that if it's for my reasons and my motivations. You will only do it if you think, oh, that's good for me. So everything you do, if I'm speaking outer Swahili and you don't speak outer Swahili. I can be as convincing as I like on that, but nothing can happen.
Yeah, I'm deaf to what you're saying. Exactly. Yeah.
So you've got everything has to be from the other person's frame of reference.
Could you suggest your top resources for people to feel more confident, I suppose, in public speaking? And then we'll move on to video.
So definitely, if you haven't visited my website before, go to my blog area. I create more content than most anybody else in Europe on Better Speaking Today. You will find hundreds of articles, hundreds of videos, hundreds of podcasts. So there's tons and tons and tons.
What works best for you, podcasts or videos?
It's interesting. They are mutually beneficial, because what is really interesting is I will oftentimes create a video interview like this one, and then I'll have the podcast, and so you'll get maybe 500 or 2,000 people who watch the video, and then I'll have maybe about half as many again who listen into the podcast. A lot of them the same people, because it's great if you have a small chunk of information that solves a particular problem, like you're out in the gym or you're out and about, you're shopping, you're plugged in. Everyone gets plugged in nowadays.
Or even in the car to drive home or whatever.
But so they're both really, really good. But the interesting thing about podcasting, and this could be a whole separate topic incidentally, is that podcasting is an unbelievably powerful way to get your message heard today, because now that people are mostly watching video or they're listening through their phones, in fact everything goes through this thing now.
Exactly.
If I can get undivided attention from you, where I get eartime from you, that is monumentally more powerful than trying to get you to scan an article where most people are not reading anymore. So, and competition in podcasting is rubbish. Everyone's a winner.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So definitely the Reluctant Speakers Club website, the blog is absolutely super. Is there any people that you think are very influential in the business, obviously apart from yourself, Eamonn, who you would kind of recommend as books maybe that people could pick up just to get confidence in public speaking and business?
In addition to my book,
in addition to your own book,
which has now actually become required reading in many law schools in America. It's called How to Make Powerful Speeches. So
by Eamonn O'Brien.
That is the last and only bit of self-promotion that I will do, because it's all about you. It really is. So there some of the books that are especially helpful, not all of them are actually about public speaking, but rather about telling a better story. One of my favourite actually comes from the subject of better writing, which you can then translate into better stories, and it's written by Stephen King, the fellow who's written all those scary novels. And so you know what Stephen King says, and then he went round the corner. You're thinking, don't go round the corner. This is Stephen King. You know nothing good is around that corner. Oh man, he went round the corner. But anyway, he wrote a book which is absolutely marvellous, and I recommend it to people right, left and centre. It's called On Writing. And so I think that is hugely helpful. But another book I'm going to recommend, there's a fellow called Mark Schaefer, who has written a number of books, one of which is called Breaking the Code. It's 2 years old now, but it's still as important today as ever. And it has to do with something you and I were talking about, this mad amount of information. He calls it content shock, and now that word is now associated with him. And he talks about how do you rise above that noise. Because increasingly, if your audience is going to find you online like this, then you've got to connect with them. But you've got to do more than that. It's got to be so interesting that not only do they like you, do they trust you, but they actually want to share it with other people because it makes them look better.
That's great. That's I think for any small business, or even like for a business like Sage ourselves as well, that's exactly what we aspire to do, and all businesses should aspire to do. That's brilliant.
Get his book. It's absolutely brilliant, and he's got a new one out now. So Mark, listen, can I have a few royalties?
Mark Schaefer,
you're selling millions, and maybe I've just added tuppence halfpenny to your pile of gold. But he's got another book called Known, which also then is an extension of this, which is also helping people to figure out who you are and what you stand for, because
like self-branding merely.
Self-branding, but also, when people are turning to you to trust in you, what are they trusting you for? Because if you think about just how much noise is out there, here's
like what value you represent.
Yeah, what value you represent.
Exactly.
Like, if you think about the fact that there used to be an advertisement in Ireland where a kid was pretending he was doing weights, and he said, "There are no more weights." Well, there is no more time for people to watch and absorb things. We're already actually befuddled, having less sleep than we should.
Yes.
So the noise level that's out there is only going to get worse.
Yeah, sure. We're on according to Mary Meeker's internet report recently, we're only at like 1/3 of the internet usage in the world.
Yeah.
We probably think we're we're only at the start of the internet, really.
So the upshot is that when people are trying to deal with that level of information overload, I talked about this before. This is how we're all functioning. The blinkers.
Yes.
So we have to do this. Get away, get away, get away. So we have to become more self-selective about what we pay attention to, because otherwise we get nothing done. And in fact, even today, if you think about what you're going to do today, chances are that 5 years ago you have to work harder to get less done today than you did 5 years ago. So with all this stuff that's out there, you think you're better off, but you're actually not.
Yes.
So you have to build community, you have to build connection, you have to give people a reason why they should care. But most importantly, you can't trust people if they don't trust your motivation.
Yeah. And then I think that building the community moves nicely onto video.
So good.
What we're doing here today, specifically around video, and I know part of what you do in the Reluctant Speakers Club as well is help people with video. So you've come in today. Eamonn's a business expert for Sage, and you're talking about video. And I'm going to give you a plug now. 19th of July.
19th of July. We're doing in London. It's called Go Do Video, and we will send out links later on.
It's yourself and Amanda Webb.
So Amanda Webb, who incidentally is one of the top bloggers in the world, recently elevated to the top 10 in social marketing week, I think it's called, which is an incredible accolade, really. So we're going to do two things. One, we're going to talk about how do you create content that is genuinely interesting to your audience and solving problems. And secondly, no point producing something really valuable if nobody sees it. How do you make sure that people find it and share it?
Yeah, that's in London on the 19th of
London,
July.
yeah, half a day. It's going to be in Soho, and you'll find the address and all the other details in the link.
Yep.
Because I know we can't put too much detail onto a video.
Exactly. That's good. We only run about 30-minute videos for Sage on our Facebook Live. Amanda was in last week if you haven't seen it. And we will share the link to the event on the 19th in London, which would be fantastic. So what are your tips then for, say, audience engagement, for example, or building an audience on?
Well, I think the first thing you have to decide when you're creating a video is you've got to ask yourself, why are you creating it? And to think about not only why are you creating it, but also what is the array of content that you want to create. So first thing I always say to people is get ultra specific about the people that you are addressing. Don't say everybody needs this, because everybody won't find you that way.
And not everybody needs it.
And not everybody needs it
as well. Let's be realistic.
So the first thing is that you've absolutely got to get tight on what is the specific target audience I want to go after, what specific problems can I address, and what's the best way for me to share that with you on a video. Now, if there are 3 golden rules in creating videos, and we'll get into an awful lot more detail, obviously, if you come to Go Do Video.
That's 19th of August.
Should I mention that?
In London.
Yeah. But don't try to answer more than one specific question in any video.
Yes.
Because if you go an inch wide and a mile deep, it is much more valuable for your audience. So one specific thing that you're trying to do. Second thing is that you really want to think about what do you want your audience to do and why should they do it? So you have to start with the outcome in mind. Because the whole point is, if somebody watches your video, what should the next logical step be? And then you need to kind of work backwards from that. So that really helps to just kind of center yourself and to center your audience. And the third thing is, be prepared to experiment. You do not have to be perfect on video. So most people creating Facebook Live like we're doing today, we're not going to be perfect. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, there is going to be some mistakes. Somebody might ring through. You don't know these things, but there is. Be prepared though.
So people though buy the messenger ahead of the message.
Yes. So
if you are watching this and you think, look, there's Dave and there's Eamonn, and they're genuinely here to help me today.
Yeah, that's what I think you've covered it there. What we set out to do today with Sage and bringing you in is to get our audience, which are small, medium businesses and even big enterprises as well, to speak with more confidence in public. And the public can be 5 or 6 people that they're working with, or it could be like this in a video. So this is the point.
So and then when you create the video, then and you want to, incidentally, you don't have to be speaking to camera all the time. There's so many things where you can actually put in pictures, you can put in text, you can put in the odd slide. Don't just do pure slides. So that's kind of a boring type of thing. You can do interviews. Interviews are brilliant, incidentally, because they're far less nerve-wracking than if you're doing another thing, folks. Today I want to talk about,
It can be a little less engaging, I suppose, when it's just one person, like you say, when they're just talking to the video, and it can be a bit scary.
But I was going to say that one of the things that really matters for if you're doing something on Facebook is to realize that the vast majority of videos on Facebook are watched, to the extent they're watched, with the sound off.
Yes.
So it's really important that you need to use captioning or you need to use words that people can see somewhere in your video, because if they can't see that, they have no idea what it's about, because most people, when they see, here's another video on Facebook, don't know what it's about unless they click the sound on. So honestly, the engagement level, because it's all interruption stuff, is pants. It's not good. It's rubbish. So it's very important that literally on Facebook, and you get a little bit longer on YouTube because people clicked on the title and said, oh, that might be interesting.
Yes,
get a little bit longer. 3 seconds. That's how quickly you've got to get people on board. 3 seconds to let them know this video is about something. So assume that the audience has not turned on the what is this about the sound yet.
Yes, exactly.
So can you show within 3 seconds what it's about, where somebody says, oh, that could be good, I'll turn the sound on. So that's really important. On YouTube, which obviously is where so much of, if you like, your evergreen content, which is stuff that basically solves problems again and again and again. It's not just instantly and in that moment. You've got maybe 8 seconds. That's it, to hook the audience, where they'll look at the video and say, does this sound interesting? And if they don't like it within 8 to 10 seconds, they're gone.
That's it. It's gone. And what about all the other new platforms that are out there, like Instagram Live?
Yeah, Instagram Live and what have you. It's very similar again in terms of Facebook. Actually, a good way to think about it is this. It's a bit like when you go into a bookstore, for those of us who still go into bookstores. When you're buying a book, how do you decide which one you're going to buy? And the answer is, invariably, it's going to be 2 things. 50% of it is down to the headline.
Yes.
So in a matter of just a few words, ideally 6 or less words, can you tell me why this is riveting stuff, why this might be interesting? And then the second thing, so that's 50% of all book sales. 45% of book sales comes from the book cover. The image is there,
design,
and maybe a little bit from the back back of the book, where maybe you've got a few people who said, this fella's marvellous. If you get this book, goodness, you won't know yourself, and yada yada yada. And 5% comes whatever the heck you put in between the two. So the job, first of all, is, and actually that's a great analogy for what it's like when you're creating video. That's how quickly you've got to get people hooked.
Headline packaging,
and then actual
content.
Be really interesting in a matter of seconds, And don't make it about you. Make it instantly about your audience.
So that's getting back to what we said at the start. It's about knowing your audience. It's about connecting with your audience.
Yeah.
It's about getting them to recommend to their friends to come along. That's like a book sale as well, where you go, I've just read the Stephen King book on writing. Definitely recommend it to you. Really suit what you're trying to do. So you're getting in between the headline and the cover straight away by connecting with people.
You're absolutely doing that, but you're also not being general. So if, for example, I said, get my cooking book.
Yeah, or we could have titled this Public Speaking.
Yeah, public speaking. You know,
public speaking.
Public speaking, incidentally, is a way that allows you to get something to solve a problem. Public speaking is a method, not an outcome.
Yes, whereas we got quite specific with this is speaking to a larger audiences with confidence, and under two guys is in the public sphere, like peer-to-peer, and then through the medium
live
video
or
as
camera,
well. Exactly. So we've been specific, we've built our audience in advance, and then after we're going to package it up and we're going to redistribute it through different networks. So that's how you do video and stage. So is there let me see if there's anything else there for I don't really have any more questions. I think this has been brilliant. I've found out so much from the Stephen King references right the way through. It's just been brilliant, absolutely brilliant to have you, Eamonn.
Well,
if you want to,
we're here to serve.
A last word before we go.
I guess, folks, if I was to kind of sum up 2 or 3 seriously important takeaways when you're creating any form of content, I would say, first of all, solve problems that your audience will care about. Secondly, don't try to burden your audience with too much stuff. So less is absolutely more. Thirdly, try to find ways to tell stories, because that's where most of our meaning in life comes from. 75% of everything that you learn in your life comes from story. That's unbelievably important. 75% of everything that you do in life comes from story, because of course it is. It comes from your personal experience of what happened when I did this, how I felt. So I was talking earlier on about this amazing day I had with this fellow who's a body language expert yesterday, and we were talking about how quickly we make decisions about what we believe, and it happens in a fraction of a second, not even a second. So it's about being present, and more than anything else, inviting your audience in where they genuinely believe you are there to be somebody that's going to help. You are there not out of personal motivation or why you're going to be better off, but because you really care about them. And you are unbelievably transparent. I know your boss actually makes a big deal about this, and I love that notion of transparent leadership.
Yeah, this is Stephen Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely, because he talks about transparent leadership, and I think that's 100% right. That when somebody hears and when they see you, you've got to think about that almost like a visceral experience.
Yes, yeah.
What do they come away thinking about when they've met you?
Yeah.
Do they think, actually, that person was there for me?
Yeah. And were they engaged during that time?
Were they engaged? Were they just focused on me, or were they thinking about the next thing?
Yeah. When the phone comes out in the middle of the conversation.
Yeah, somebody does this. Yeah.
That's it.
Not so much. Exactly. Or I'm kind of looking past you. Actually, that drives me nuts. If you ever talk to somebody, the next thing you say, "Excuse me, can I help you? Can I help you?"
Yeah. Are we done here? I think we actually are done here. So, Eamonn O'Brien from the Reluctance Speakers Club, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you here with Sage Live. I'm Dave Murphy, and if you have any questions, we'll get back to you on the questions.
I'm Eamonn O'Brien, and I'm with him.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye-bye.
See you guys.